Weeping Woman's Curse, a teenage nightmare. It was a dark and stormy night. 5 teenagers, huddled around a campfire, were telling each other ghost stories. Suddenly, one of them spoke up. "Hey, have you guys heard about the Weeping Woman?" he asked, looking around at his friends. The others shook their heads, intrigued. "I heard it from my grandma," he continued. "She said that the Weeping Woman is a spirit that haunts the river, crying for her children whom she drowned in a fit of rage after her husband left her." "That's creepy," said one of the girls, shivering. "What else did your grandma say?" "Well, she said that the Weeping Woman only appears at night, and that if you hear her crying, you should never look at her directly in the eyes. Otherwise, she'll take you away and drown you in the river too." The group fell silent for a moment, mulling over the story. "I heard something similar from my mom," said another boy. "She said that the Weeping Woman was once a beautiful young woman who married a wealthy man, but he cheated on her and left her for another woman. In her grief and anger, she drowned their children and then killed herself." "Wait, how could anyone know that?" asked one of the girls skeptically. "I don't know, but that's what my mom told me," the boy shrugged. "I heard a different version from my dad," said the quietest member of the group, who had been listening intently. "He said that the Weeping Woman was actually a witch who lived near the river and practiced black magic. One day, the townspeople found out about her and burned her at the stake, but not before she cursed them and their descendants." "That's crazy," said one of the boys, rolling his eyes. "How could a witch curse an entire town?" "I don't know, but my dad swears it's true," the quiet one insisted. The group fell into a thoughtful silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the Weeping Woman. Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder shook them out of their reverie, and they all jumped. Okay, that's enough ghost stories for tonight," said the first boy, looking around nervously. "Let's go back to our tents." As they trudged through the dark and muddy forest, they couldn't help but glance over their shoulders, half expecting to see a woman in white following them. The legend of the Weeping Woman had certainly left an impression on them. The next night, the 5 teenagers found themselves at the river, where the legend of the Weeping Woman was said to take place. The moon was full and the night was eerily quiet, except for the sound of the rushing water. "Okay, so how are we gonna test this legend?" asked the first boy, looking around at his friends. "We could try to summon the Weeping Woman," suggested the quiet one. "How do we do that?" asked one of the girls skeptically. "Well, my dad told me that if you light 3 candles and say her name 3 times, she'll appear," the quiet one explained. The group looked at each other uncertainly. "I don't know about this," said the scared girl. "What if something bad happens?" "Relax, nothing bad is gonna happen," said the first boy confidently. "It's just a legend, remember?" After a few minutes of arguing, the group finally agreed to try the ritual. They lit 3 candles and arranged them in a triangle on the ground, then held hands and began to chant. "Weeping Woman, Weeping Woman, Weeping Woman." Suddenly, the sound of a woman's crying filled the air. The group froze, their hands still clasped together. The crying grew louder and louder, until it seemed to be coming from right behind them. "Okay, I think that's enough," said the first boy, his voice trembling. "Agreed," said another boy, already turning to run. The group quickly extinguished the candles and scattered in all directions, running back to their tents as fast as they could. They didn't stop until they were safely inside, huddled together in fear. "Did you guys hear that?" asked the scared girl, her eyes wide. "Yeah, what was that?" asked one of the boys. "It sounded like a woman crying," said the quiet one, his voice barely above a whisper. The group fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts about the Weeping Woman. They had all heard the crying, but they couldn't be sure if it was real or just their imagination. "Let's not do that again," said one of the girls finally, breaking the silence. The others nodded in agreement. The legend of the Weeping Woman was no longer just a story to them, it was something real and terrifying that they had experienced firsthand. After the incident at the river, the 5 teenagers were all shaken. They had heard the Weeping Woman, just as the legend said, and it was a sound they would never forget. They tried to push the memory to the back of their minds, but it was always there, haunting them. A week after their encounter with the Weeping Woman, one of the boys, named Alex, disappeared. His parents reported him missing, and soon the whole town was searching for him. The other 4 teenagers were questioned by the police, but they had no idea what had happened to Alex. They were just as scared and confused as everyone else. However, as the days went on, rumors began to circulate that Alex had been taken by the weeping woman. Some people in the town believed that the legend was real and that the weeping woman had claimed another victim. One night, the 4 remaining teenagers were gathered together in one of their tents, trying to distract themselves from the fear and anxiety that had taken hold of the town. "I can't stop thinking about it," said the scared girl, her voice trembling. "What if the weeping woman is real and she took Alex?" "Don't be ridiculous," said the first boy, trying to sound confident. "It was probably just some kind of accident or something." "But what if it wasn't?" asked the quiet one. "What if the legend is true?" The group fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Suddenly, they heard a sound outside the tent, a soft weeping, just like the sound they had heard at the river. "Did you guys hear that?" asked one of the boys, his eyes wide. The others nodded, their hearts pounding in their chests. The weeping grew louder and more frantic, until it seemed to be coming from all around them. They could hear footsteps outside the tent, coming closer and closer. Suddenly, the tent flap was thrown open, and there she was, the weeping woman. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and her long black hair hung in tangled strands around her face. She reached out a bony hand towards them, her fingers grasping for something to hold onto. The 4 teenagers screamed and scrambled to their feet, pushing past the weeping woman and running as fast as they could towards the town. When they reached safety, they collapsed onto the ground, panting and sobbing with fear. They knew now that the legend of the weeping woman was real, and they would never forget the terror they had felt that night. As for Alex, he was never found. Some people in the town believed that the weeping woman had taken him, while others believed that he had simply run away. But the 4 teenagers knew the truth: the weeping woman was real, and she was waiting for her next victim.